this conversation. Good morning again, and thanks to all board members for joining this conversation. Really appreciate your engagement in this and our opportunity, taking this opportunity to engage in this conversation a little earlier. I'm excited with the some of the shifts and enhancements that Mr. Burke has brought to reporting around our finances and even some of the conversations that we've had. As you all know, for several months, we have been speaking to some challenges around our finances. And so looking forward to providing you with updates on that front and just kind of sharing what we know and what we're expecting as we move further into this fiscal year. I'll pause there and ask Mr. Burke just to give us a lay of the land for the next several minutes and then just dive on in.
All right, thank you, Dr. Green. Board, President Sevac, good morning, first and foremost. Glad you all could make it for this presentation. I will apologize, I'm a little sleep deprived right off the bat, trying to sort out some of this information and think through the story that I wanted to tell you today or lay out for the board in this presentation. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Can everyone see that? See my screen?
We can.
Okay, thank you. All right, so what's going on there? There we go. All right. So this presentation will be, and feel free to jump in and ask questions, board, as we go through. I do want it to be informative more than just me talking. I do want it to sort of be an introduction to how I see budgeting and how I visualize the management of fiscal affairs. So, and then Dr. Sevac and I had a very productive first meeting to sort of tee this up to what the Finance Committee has seen in the past, what you would like to see moving forward. And then I just sort of, so this is sort of the culmination of that conversation, along with information that Dr. Green wants me to, encourages me to share and make sure you understand. And I think it's important. So the presentation overview is quite simple. We'll quickly go through the current and historical context that we're sort of living into right now. I'll talk a little bit about the steady state financial management and basically meaning how we're managing, or in the words of that I've heard, living into the budget that was passed for this fiscal year. Then we'll talk a little bit about understanding fund balance, because I think it's important that we have that discussion as we think through and level set our preparations for thinking into or starting to build into the 24 fiscal budget. Managing actuals versus budget will be a conversation on how day to day we look at our management of the budget that you've approved and how we look at those expenditures to make sure we are staying within those budgetary numbers and hopefully lagging behind expenditures from last year, with this hopes of again building into a more healthy financial position. Then developing and evaluating our next steps, we'll sort of have that discussion together. I'll express to you what the executive team has identified as things that will be budget priorities or things that they're looking at moving forward. And then the final piece will be, what information do you need to kind of help you galvanize your thoughts around how we're managing our financial position now and what we're going to be asking or recommending later on. What does that look like, so that I'll have a better idea from your own perspectives, what you need to help you make decisions. So again, we know what the JPS Vision and Mission are, so I won't read those to you. but that everything we do fiscally in the finance and operations office, as well as across the district, is to support your vision and Dr. Green's vision and mission for the direction of the district. I have, these are our core values. I agree with every one of them. And I'm asking my team to lean into all of these. Equity, when we think about providing financial resources for all of our students for what they need, not necessarily in a mindset of dollar for dollar expenditures, but some of our students, some of our employees need more. They've lagged behind. Our buildings, our operations, our facilities, our vehicles. There's an equity component that goes into the thought process about how we spend our money, all designed around excellence, keeping in mind this growth mindset that we cannot continue to do what we've always done if we want to get different results. Working on relationships, I've talked to Dr. Green and the executive team about, and as I listen to their needs, how we can find partners to assist us with this and revisit relationships that may have deteriorated over time, particularly with some of our governmental partners, and trying to rebuild those relationships, trying to look at, make sure that we understand the needs of the vendors, our vendor partners, being receptive to them, and making sure that we are good, not only good stewards of our money, but we're entering into wholesome outcomes-based relationships that get us to where we want to go, while kind of helping to provide financial stability to our wider community, making sure things are relevant, and then just maintaining a positive and respectful culture. And then all of this ties, in my mind, to commitment number 5 of our strategic plan, a culture of accountability and excellence. We definitely want that to permeate throughout our school district, and it's very important that the finances of a school district, it be not only perceived, but be the reality that we're managing those things in a way that builds confidence, and that comes through accountability, a culture of accountability and excellence. So the current context and historical context of our district, and you may have seen some of this, and I've used the source for this was West Ed. They have been a great partner in providing some of this information. It was, in my mind, they are a vendor partner that has provided some value in terms of information and decision making. But very clearly, what you'll see is that the enrollment has declined on average of 4% in our schools over the past few years. So that's something that we're having to deal with and grapple with. We know enrollment declines have been steeper in our elementary schools. That there are several factors there. One, it's due to low birth rates, but it's also due to young people, parents making choices to go in different directions. And so that's a reality that we have to keep in mind. State funding, because it is driven by average daily attendance and enrollment, those numbers have declined over time. So that's just one of the realities that we have to live in, making sure our students come to school in the months that are most critical, this being one, and then November being the next month. But it's important for us to keep this in mind as we think about and start to consider the priority programs and the priority things that we need to do to build a strong financial position for the next year. We have to keep this in mind. These are the waters we're in. JPS enrollment has declined over 6,000 students from 2018 through 2022. That is an important thing to note, because we really need to start thinking about what's our future view of our school district. Is that a district of 19,000 students? Is it a district of 18,000 students? What does that look like? So as we have further conversations, you have the context that that's how Dr. Green and the executive team are looking at this. We're looking at this from the standpoint of some point in the future, we're hoping this will stabilize, but hope is not a plan. So we're planning for some sort of stabilized number around 17 to 18,000 students. One thing that is of note is that though enrollment has decreased over time, staffing changes have not kept the same level of decrease. That it's important to see this. That may be because we've put an emphasis on having the appropriate staff to make sure we're delivering on the promise of a high quality education for our students. But there also needs to be some considerations of and there may be considerations of equity, class size. Those are things that we're going to have to start thinking about. Is this sustainable? Is this something that we want to continue to do? Are we overstaffed because of poor planning? There's just a lot of questions there that we need to delve into and get clear on so that we can make better choices moving forward in terms of staffing. And overall, again, I want the wider context for any public that would be viewing this is that JPS's enrollment issues are not an issue that is happening in a vacuum. It is happening to the wider Jackson population. So the school, so goes the community, so goes the schools. And it's important for us to keep that in mind that the population of Jackson, the wider community is declining. So we are seeing that reflected in our school operations in terms of student enrollment.
Mr. Burke, can I ask you a quick question on
Yes, sir.
the
Please.
chart that you just showed? If you could go back one slide. No, right there.
This one or one more?
Right there. Yeah.
Oh, yes, sir.
At the bottom where you've got the city of Jackson change in population over time,
Yes, sir.
and then you've got the Jackson Public School District. Are those numbers like, so 2013, 2014, you have 0.8, then 1.4, 3.6, 3.8.
Yes, sir.
Are the JPS numbers cumulative or are those snapshots?
So that is a good question. I'm working the numbers in my head real quick to see.
It's just a question to see how, if it's cumulative, it seemed like it would be tracking the population trends in the city more closely.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's a snapshot because it would yeah, I'm thinking that's a snapshot because if it was cumulative, it would be higher. Because
yeah, you're right. You're right. I see.
Yeah, it's a snapshot in time. Yes.
Okay, so is it a fair assessment that our student population is declining at a much steeper rate than the population loss in the city?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I'm glad you pointed that out because that was a point I had as a note to make, that we are that though the population is declining, again, our student population is declining at a higher clip. And again, as I said, that could be there are a lot of factors that go into that. I mean, one is low birth rates, two, making other choices, three, people are moving out of the state altogether. So it's not just an evacuation of JPS, particularly as you get to the 2019, 2020, and then 21. We could say COVID had something to do with that. Families moving in with other family members. So it's not necessarily an indictment of the school district. It's simply a contextual reality that we have to deal with.
Right. I agreed with that framing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Steady state fiscal management. When I talk about steady state, the board, you passed the budget, and living into that budget, we have to manage in a sort of a steady state of fiscal review. So when I'm talking about steady state, the management activities that I undertake to make sure that we're doing this, and my two primary goals set in conjunction with Dr. Green center around this idea of managing our expenditures to the budget that we passed, not letting those grow outside that parameter. And then two, with this focus on managing well enough to add to fund balance. And I'm gonna talk why fund balance is so important to any school district or anybody, but particularly to what we do here in Jackson Public Schools. But just to some of the activities that take place in each of these sort of silos. From a cash management standpoint, fund balance plays a big role in that, and I'll explain in further detail in a second. active cash flow management and monitoring. It's imperative. It's sort of where you have a bank account and you just go out and you don't want your spouse just going out and spending. If you're the money manager, you don't want them just going out and spending because they keep writing checks. At some point, if nobody's watching that, nobody's reconciling bank statements, you're going to have some bounce checks. So active cash flow, day-to-day monitoring of that is important when you have a tight amount of money that you're trying to manage. The other thing is the timing expenditures. We'd all love to go out at the first of the year and buy a new house, buy a new car, get everything fixed, but it doesn't work out that way. We get paid in 12 equal installments. If you work in a school district, if you're a private citizen, you may get paid every 2 weeks. So you can't front load all of those expenditures and then pay them out unless you have a big credit card balance, and you could, but we don't have that in a school district. So we have to sort of time out our expenditures to where they're manageable in smaller bites so we can pay and make sure we have the cash flow to cover everything we need to cover. From an expenditure control standpoint, I talk a lot about managing our actual expenditures to what the budget says. So that means when somebody submits a requisition that we are making sure they have the money appropriated in that budget. If they don't, they need to come and we have to have a process to make sure that is an approvable expenditure, or they have to transfer money from another place. We're just not going to give you money. You've got to manage your budget in that way. Active operations efficiency determinations, constantly looking for ways to make things more efficient. If we can share assistance, if we can, without hiring another one, and they can share some duties, we can find some synergies that way. That's some ways we can do that. Not riding together on a trip as opposed to everybody taking their own car. These are small things, but I tell Dr. Green all the time, these pennies, these nickels they add up to dollars. And if we can create, but it's more than just the amount, it's about creating a culture where everybody thinks that way, that we cannot continue to just spend because we don't have the resources to do that. And so when we talk about enrollment, right sizing our schools to enrollment, looking at the staffing, because our budget is so personnel intensive, 85% of it is in people, we have to make sure we are right sizing and looking at that and not just adding staff because we've always had staff in those positions. We've got to look for efficiencies in those areas to make sure we are utilizing those dollars as best we can. And so this gets to the cost principles. Basically, we hear a lot about these three questions when we talk about federal funds, but I apply them to everything. I ask questions: does this make sense? Is it reasonable? Is it reasonable to go out and spend $40,000 to host an event at the Jackson Convention Center versus if we can break it up and have it in our schools and save that money? I mean, is it? I mean, it may make perfect sense, but it may also be something we've always done. Is it necessary? Is it allocable? I mean, so because we're trying to make sure that we are utilizing our district funds for those things that we have to. Can some other source of funding pay for this this expenditure? And then when all those questions are sort of failing, justify it. Let's make it make sense, because if we can make it make sense to the executive team, then we can reasonably come and stand in front of you guys and make it make sense to you, and we can justify it. And I think every expenditure needs to have some justification. So that's sort of the thought process that I go through when I'm reviewing, and hopefully that'll be the culture that we can instill as we move forward. Any questions about anything I've put there so far? Okay. All right, so understanding fund balance, just real quickly, and if you have questions, I'm gonna try to use my annotation tool here. So just
Bert.
Yes, sir.
Bert.
Yes, sir.
Just restate it, if you can, the same statement that you made about 85% of the budget being people oriented.
So yes, sir. 85% of our district maintenance funds are allocated to personnel. So that is school staff, school teachers, administrators, the central office administrative staff, the operational people, with the exception of child nutrition, are all paid for primarily from district funds. Now, we do have federal funds that pays for people. We have some grants. We have other sources, but primarily, and we are working really hard to make sure that where appropriate personnel can be in those other funding sources. But primarily what's taking place right now is district maintenance is carrying a huge personnel burden. We're doing some things to sort of shift people, but it is that is a 85% to 90% of our budget is in personnel costs. So those are costs that are purchased as soon as that person is hired. They cannot be parsed out. They cannot be passed off. Once you hire that person is owned. So when we have these conversations, when Dr. Merritt is talking about and Dr. Green are talking about enrollment numbers, that number means something to Dr. Cormack. It means that he has to determine how much staff as close as he can, so we can determine how those people are going to be paid for. But that means something. And when that enrollment shifts, when it's lower than what we expect, we have to start looking at, okay, do we freeze hiring? Have we hired these folks? Have we bought them? Can we utilize them in other ways? That's where we get into this creative conversation of making sure that we're utilizing those people, not just continuing to hire because we budgeted that many people. We may not need them. But then the flip side of that, or it may be determined that a school's enrollment is higher and we can shift that personnel around. So there's a lot of that goes on, not just in the finance and operations office, it goes on in chief of staff's office, and it also goes out in Dr. Cormack's office, the deputy superintendent's office, making those decisions with the academic staff to make sure that we are, again, looking at the dollars related to personnel and making sure we're spending those appropriately. I hope that answered your question. That may have been too much information. Okay.
And just to contextualize it, Mr. Burke, would you say that this is common, that percentage in a school district being spent of the district maintenance fund being spent on?
So yeah, thank you, Dr. Green. So
just
yes,
quickly,
it is typically, so I will say this, one, it is not unheard of for it to be that way. JPS is a little higher than I'd like to see, so we're working to get some of it down. So typically what I'd like to see is 65 to 85%. So you'd have some, that's a wider, well, 65 to 75% would be closer. But we've done some things over time in here that in terms of, we take people, federal programs buys products or services. And so we need to sort of right size that. But to Dr. Green's point, it's not unheard of for a district that has as many people to have as high personnel balance in the district maintenance as we do.
Absolutely right. Even in the private sector, the P&L analysis is what they may refer to as service expense or people expense. That's the highest item in a P&L statement.
Right. And in an industry like education, where it's primarily people. I mean, the goods and services you buy facilitate the delivery of service, but the service is delivered by people. So it's always going to be the largest expenditure. Any more questions on that? Did that clarify, Dr. Green? All right, thank you. All right, so just moving on. Oh, back up. So just because I want you to understand when we talk about fund balance, why fund balance is important, and not a lot of people get this, but I want you to be at least conversational about it. Dr. Green does a good job. Dr. Cormack does a good job. Dr. Merritt, they all do. They all understand it well enough to be able to be conversational about it. And I want that same level for you. So if we just look, I'm gonna drop this annotation tool. Let me see if it'll right. Can you see the green arrow that I'm drawing? Okay, so if we look at, I'm just gonna focus on this fiscal year 2022. You can see if you look across the 101, the 101s are cash. Fund balance is, well, let me go back. So fund balance, I've got the equation for you at the bottom. Simple accounting equation is fund equity, or fund balance as we refer to it, is equal to our assets minus our outstanding liabilities. At the top of this sheet, this is what we call a balance sheet. So at the top is the assets, and we list all of our assets: cash, petty cash. This group called receivables. These are monies that we're waiting on to come into us from outside sources. Then we have our due from other funds, which are things that we're waiting on also to come in from other funds. And then we have this group, the inventory group, which is things we have that we could easily convert, or not easily, but should be convertible to cash. We could sell them, supplies, our paper, those things that we can sell to turn into cash if we had to liquidate quickly. The next group is liabilities. Liabilities are those things that we owe that are going to be going out at some point. Here you see AP accruals. That'd be our account payable checks. At this June 30th period, we had $803,000 worth of AP checks still out that had not been cashed. They're waiting to be cashed. We had accrual payroll that we're waiting to pay of 7.2. And then we had things that were due to other funds. These could be loans that we're loaning to another fund that went into the negative, or was covering something for them until they got their money in. Once you take the assets and you subtract the liabilities, you wind up with this fund equity amount. And again, that includes some reserves for inventories, and it includes that fund balance number of 18.7 million. So though our fund equity is at June 30th of 2022 was $21,900,000, I want you to understand that only 5.6 million of that was in cash. Only 5.6 million was liquid at that time. So what that means is we had nearly over 20 million. It's closer to 23 million that was either in receivables. Well, 6 million of it was receivables, and then we had 16 million in due to other funds. Now, what are those groups? Those things would be our drawdowns that we're waiting for federal funds to reimburse us, our ESSER expenditures, our title expenditures, all those groups that I show you monthly in the monthly financial reports that are carrying negative balances because they're waiting for money to come in to be reimbursed. So when we talk about this fund balance number, it's important to get that number up, but it's also important for us over time to, and this will happen over time as ESSER funds expend themselves, those funds will go away. As the bond issue monies expend themselves, they will go away. This will come more into balance. But you can see from 2018, we've carried some high due from other funds at June 30th of each of these years. In 18, it was 14 million, 19, it was 17 million, 20 was 18 million, 21 was 12, and then now in 22 is 16. I fully expect in 23, when I show you this again, you'll still see that high balance number there. So, but I want you to understand when we talk about fund balance, this is why we talk about it. And this is why cash flow is so important. Because month to month, cash flow shifts. And as money comes in, as things come in, it ebbs and flows. And we'll be presenting you in November 1st board meeting our request to do a TAN, which is a tax anticipation note, because we have to do that for cash flow purposes. And this is one of the reasons why, because we carry such a low balance in cash throughout the year, particularly until our ad valorem comes in. So I hope I explained that in a way that makes you a little bit more aware, and hopefully I didn't confuse you any more than perhaps you may have already been. Any questions? Anything I can clear up?
I have a Dr. Green, looked like you might were going to make a point. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in trying to talk about this quickly, I just want to really underscore. So the first, you were referencing, Mr. Burke, the 16.1 million due from other funds. These are other funds within JPS.
Yes.
Right? And so this is money, this is our money, but it's not money that we have that we can access and use right now. It's we often will front funds for federal for some of these other buckets, whether it's federal programs or something else, or all of the ESER projects, maintenance projects, HVAC, et cetera, building renovations, et cetera. We front these funds out of our district maintenance, and we're to get them back reimbursed from federal funds or ESER budget or what have you. So just want to underscore that, while there was the at this snapshot, the 5.6 million in cash, the rest of that is our money, those assets, the rest of that is our money.
Right.
We just don't have easy access to it right now.
Yes.
And again, to the point about cash flow, we've got to be mindful of how many projects we take on at a particular time so that we can front the funds, do the work, get it reimbursed from the state or federal government, and have it back in our coffers.
Exactly.
But I think one of the reasons why we went deep into this on executive team was because we had a misunderstanding for some time that some of those the fund balance was wrapped up in assets and buildings and that sort of thing. The challenge with fund balance is, one, it moves, it's variable throughout the year because of what I just talked about, the way the money comes in and goes out and all that sort of thing, in order to operate and move some of those projects. And only a small piece of it is the a property or something that we couldn't use eventually to cover payroll or cover this, that, or the third. And so as I've come to understand it, our fund balance is, while we don't have all of the money on hand at the moment, it is money that is due us and that, we count as assets. So I just wanted to kind of underscore that.
Thank you.
I have one question, but first I wanted to say, this presentation is great. It's really great and informative. And I'm really glad that you've taken the time to break things down and explain it to board members. When you were talking about planning for the long term and the projection that the numbers of the district are going to decline further, I was wondering, are we modeling that off of other districts that are similar? And then I wanted to know if we've thought about the effect of our rating increasing and how that would affect the district. So
both good questions. So there are some, when it comes to modeling from other districts, JPS is sort of unique. We can model our thought processes around how we budget, the methodologies that we use. Yes, so there will be some of that. A lot of things through experience that I've done over the years to balance budgets will be brought to bear. There'll be conversations later on among the executive team about, do we start thinking about how do we start thinking about or continue to think about class sizes? Do we start to establish those things more uniformly? I mean, there'll be some of those things that we have to do that other districts do that perhaps maybe we have not done, or we have not done as with fidelity. So there'll be some conversations around those things that will come to in the next finance committee meeting, when we get more into the weeds of what we need to do to start the preparation for the budget. As it relates to
Burke, can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead,
But to be clear, and I think this was more the question as we're modeling out what we anticipate and project as enrollment declines or funding projections and that sort of thing. So while we are watching other districts in terms of their enrollment, other districts in this area in particular, not necessarily outside of this area. While we're watching for that, our modeling is more based on what we know from birth rates and from, census data and trends there, anything that we might know about even, with charter schools and as they're shifting and expanding or whatever they're doing, any movement with charter schools. It's that kind of thing that we will more readily utilize to try to inform our own and not so much benchmarking against other districts. Just trying to pull from all those pieces to inform our own modeling. And as you know, it's best guess. What have we seen previously and what are the possibilities that this will change, et cetera. We absolutely believe that with our increased performance that we'll start to see some improvements there or stabilizing of our enrollment. It's hard to say to what degree, but folks respond to performance and respond to increases in that way. Sorry, Mr. Burke, I just wanted to.
No, I
thought I was hearing the question a little differently. So.
Okay, no, thank you. Did that answer your question?
It did. It did. Thank you both. So it also informs me that this is going to be a difficult process, that there is no easy answer. So thank you.
Yeah, and what you heard from Mr. Burke earlier is a increasingly intentional effort to plan, but then to monitor and adjust along the way. And what y'all, just openly, what y'all have experienced from us in the past is that, we've budgeted, we brought a budget to you, recommended it, you have supported that by approving those budgets, and we've done some monitoring, but typically we had some adjustments throughout, but the big adjustment typically has come at the end of the year where we try to reconcile our budgets and all that. So our team, at this point, we're striving to be more intentional and I won't say proactive, but to make those adjustments along the way and to do that out loud so that we're obviously monitoring against what we said we were going to do, what we budgeted, but also making adjustments. So, within that top line number, budget for, call it 180 million. So if that's the top line number, how do we move dollars around on budget lines within that to stay within the top line budget number, but adjust to what we're experiencing throughout the year? Is that? Don't let me get out too far ahead of my skis, Mr.
No, that I like the use of the word intentional because that's what it is. It's intentional management, and that's important. One, it sets the tone that we are not only the executive, that we're being responsive to you, board, but it's also a part of making sure that people understand that we are serious about living into to the dollars that have been given to us by taxpayers and any other stakeholders. It's not just this, we budget and then we just do whatever we want to do until we get to the end of the year. And then, oh, wait, we got to suddenly make all these shifts. We're questioning, why is money sitting in places? If you requested it and you went through a thorough process of wanting it, didn't you have some sort of need or for that money? So as I'm having conversation with Dr. Green, as I'm having conversation with the other executive team, I'm pointing out, okay, so we're reviewing every line item, not just one or two. We're reviewing every line item to find the resources that then, if instructional needs more money at a certain school, they want to apply some special thing at another school, we can say we've identified a place where we can get this money. We don't have to come back to you and say we need to amend the budget and go up. I'd much rather use what we've been given. And that, I think that, and that's the sort of the charge that Dr. Green has given me in my goal that I've got to work my way into. All right, so any more questions on fund balance? Okay, so
Mr. Burke, what I may recommend, Dr. Green, same here, and maybe look to the board. I want to be mindful of time. I know we got a late start, but I also know folks are calling in from work, and so this seems like it's a natural stopping point in the presentation.
Okay.
And what I might recommend is that we schedule this meeting 2.0 to pick it up at the managing actuals versus budget. How do folks feel about that?
If you, Dr. Green, the last thing, I mean, I just got one, I'll skip to this last thing. So just by way of asking for assistance from you guys in terms of how you would like to get information, what information do you need from me? And if how do you normally provide that information? If it comes back through Dr. Green, if it comes through Dr. Sivak, how does that mechanism sort of work? Dr. Green.
Yeah. So why don't we do this? Because we are at time. I appreciate that. You know, this is not the first time, and likely won't be the last, that Mr. Burke has kind of pitched this piece. You know, what do you need from me? How can I best present information in a way that is useful to you and answers questions? And that, let's keep that question in front of folks, even at the next board meeting. We'll definitely get the next finance committee meeting scheduled, pick up where we left off here, but want to just keep that question, and even some of the iterations on reports, that fund balance information, any of that y'all have seen and you want to see more of, just signal that, and we'll just keep iterating on the process here. How does that work for folks?
That sounds great. Yeah. So I will ask Ms. Williams to poll the board, you know, so just because I saw that there was that one worksheet that you shared in previous board materials. So if we could schedule, you know, one more work session like this to go over that, and then board members, if you could reflect on this last question Mr. Burke put to us, you know, what information do we need? That, I think that'll allow us to just be prepped for the ongoing budget conversation that was outlined today.
Yes, sir, we'll do.
Great.
Yeah. Well, in wrapping for the administration, we're feeling good about our current positioning, much better than you know, what I shared and indicated closing last year and coming into this year. You know, definitely more relief than I saw then, and so appreciate the great work that Mr. Burke and his team are doing, and we'll continue to manage really closely and prepare ourselves for rainier days that we know are coming. Winter is coming. So we'll leave it at that. Pause there.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Green. Mr. Burke, thank you for all the work on this. This was great. This was a really helpful training session. I learned some things today. So board members, I hope that it was helpful as well. And if there are any other questions or comments from board members before we close.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Burke.
You're welcome, sir.
Very helpful.
All right. Well, we will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today and for your time and for the prep that went into the meeting. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.